Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shootaround. I am the only host of this podcast, and Rudy Saint-Claire. Joining me, against tradition, I suppose, below me for a change, is the legendary Alex Hoops, and then I guess that's adjacent to me is the one and only Rusty Buckets. How are we doing today, fellas?
My
Good.
dad said that he would finally be proud of me if I shouted him out at the beginning of the episode. So, shout out to Papa Hoops.
Yeah, no, that's a reasonable standard to be proud of your son is if he mentions you on his podcast. Hi, Dad. Today we're going to be ranking every team in the NBA. Our methodology is pretty simple. I had Jacob and Alex send me their rankings of every team 30-1, and then I did my little rankings 30-1. And in a little Excel spreadsheet, I valued my opinion at half the weight which you guys carry because I'm the professional casual here. I'm a host of this podcast, not an analyst. You guys are the experts as far as I'm
So
concerned.
you're like the casual swing of the vote.
Right. I have available to me the list if all of our opinions weigh equally, and all of your individual lists as well.
Yeah, I'm going to reference my individual list at any points that I am personally offended at where these teams are ranked.
Without any further ado, if you are watching at home, you can direct your attention to this little guy way over here. If you get lost, those are the power rankings, if it's not obvious. And if you're listening, be sure to tune in to also Rusty Buckets on YouTube so you can catch these shows live and join the chat. Number 30, contrary to what is on the thumbnail of this video, is the Detroit Pistons, not the Houston Rockets. Fellas, why you so low on the Pistons?
Well, I don't think I was that low.
Alex, you ranked him 27. Jacob, you ranked him dead
30.
last. I put them 25th. I have a little bit more faith in Cade Cunningham taking a little bit of a leap than you guys, I suppose. Maybe carrying these guys to some stability. But Jacob, last in the league.
I'm also realizing that I ranked the Magic too low, but whatever. The Pistons, I mean, frankly, I don't know. Every other team above them I like a little bit more. They're in the garbage tier. But I don't know. I feel very weird with the way the league is because I feel like, if we looked back 7 years ago, there were always like 2 to 3, maybe even 4 franchises that were just completely inept with nothing to be excited for or nothing to provoke the thought of potentially being a good basketball team. But there are like, I don't know, 24 teams that feel like they could potentially be playoff caliber. It just depends on how things swing, and the Pistons just lost for me.
No, they didn't just lose. They ended up dead last.
Yeah. I mean, haven't they been dead last the last 2 years? Although they didn't have Cade last year.
Right.
They weren't dead last.
They weren't dead last. I don't remember exactly.
Maybe in your heart they were dead last.
Yeah.
They were... Oh, no, they were dead last. What? I didn't realize that. Okay, well, never mind.
All right.
I had them 27th, but they're a team that could like easily end up being higher. I had them 27th because they only won, 17 games last year. I definitely think getting Cade back and like just standard development from the rest of their young guys is going to be enough to have them take another step, but I don't know how big that step's going to be. So 27 felt like leaves room for improvement. While also like not kind of jumping the gun and putting them as like a play-in team because it just seems unrealistic to me. But I could see them anywhere from like where I had them at 27 all the way up to like, 23, 22.
Yeah, I could see them.
Yeah, I
being
could
that
see
high.
them going that high. Just I chose them not to.
Ripping my whole flow. Just repeating after me, I see.
Sorry.
Number 29, we got the Wizards. Why are we so low on them, fellas?
I actually ranked them 25th, but I think I should have put them down a spot.
This team, you had them at 30.
I think there's enough like actually good NBA players there. There's a chance that they're just gonna ship them away like mid-season. I wouldn't be surprised if like Tyus Jones or Kyle Kuzma were on the trade block soon enough. But or DeLon Wright. But I think the Wizards have enough actual basketball players, and I think Jordan Poole is going to be pretty good. I don't think it's just going to be purely empty numbers.
I respectfully disagree that this roster has enough talent to be anything more than a lottery team and like
Well,
probably
it's still a fucking
bottom
team.
lottery team. They have, I mean, their best player, depending on how you want to go here. You could say it's Jordan Poole. You could say it's Kyle Kuzma. You could say it's Tyus Jones. After that,
none of those are great options for your best player.
Those are three players that are indeed basketball players. Jordan Poole, I think, will probably end up being their best player, at least in terms of just like counting stats. Tyus Jones, he's a good point guard. He's a very good point guard. How will he be as a starting point guard or more of a go-to guy? We'll see, but I think he's a reliable, solid point guard. Kyle Kuzma's continuously improved throughout his career so far. He's probably to the point now where like upper end starter, maybe you start getting into the low end all-star fringe kind of guy, but those are their best players. And after that, the roster falls off a cliff.
Do we not want to give a little bit of love to Daniel Gafford?
Daniel Gafford's good, but he's not. Is Daniel Gafford, Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole, and Tyus Jones good enough to get you anything more than, like, at best, the 5th worst record in the NBA?
No, but I had them having the 5th worst record in the NBA.
I mean, to me, even being the 5th worst record is optimistic. I think they're going to be the worst team in the NBA. I just think every other team's going to be better than them.
And then moving on to number 28, this was actually a tie for 29/28, however you want to interpret that tie, with a cumulative score of 22.66666666, you know, with the worst team being 23. You want to have the lowest score in this. It's like golf. But it's the San Antonio Spurs. I chose to go ahead and slot them in at 28th because I had them all the way at 22 on my power rankings, and you guys had them at 29 and 28 respectively. So, you know, rather than calling it a tie, I just actually put them at 28. How do you guys feel about the Spurs? Clearly not very good.
I don't know how many, like, just talking about actual NBA players that they'll really have. I think they have every reason to be, like, even a top 10 defense just because Wemby alone. And, you know, I could see a little bit of a leap from Devin Vassell, but otherwise I expect the team to be mostly the same, which was not good.
I just think they're in like that phase where they're figuring out the young players that they have and like who's actually going to move forward. And I don't know, Wemby's going to be Wemby. Like, we'll see how many games he plays. We'll see what he does, how comfortable he is his first year. But he's going to be Wemby. We know Devin Vassell is kind of on the cusp of taking a leap. Keldon Johnson, we've seen enough of him to know that he's going to be around for a long time. But everyone else on that roster, it's kind of just like, maybe, you know, Trey Jones had some flashes last year where it was like, oh, you know, he might be able to be a solid point guard in the league for a long time. There were a lot of guys in summer league that looked pretty promising, like Dominic Barlow, Malachi Branham, Julian Champagnie. Those guys, like, they might be solid NBA players. They might stick, but we don't really know just yet. And when you're rolling the dice on that many players and you have primarily your ceiling as a team being banked on a rookie who they have kind of publicly said they're going to be like not load managing, but like kind of load managing this year, I don't really see them being higher than where they're at, where we have them. I mean, they were 28th for me. That's where I put them.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of load management, the NBA just apparently suggested that the science does not back up load management as a reliable strategy for extending careers and reducing injuries. So we'll see if that actually changes anything.
I wonder
about
if
the
they
league
have
or not.
any incentive to say such a thing.
Right. I saw some sort of tweet that overly summarized it, you know, kind of reduced it down to just what was it? The CIA found no tie to the crack trade and themselves, according to their own investigation. Just that sort of thing. But even with Wemby playing, say, 60 games, I could still see this team managing to squeak into the play-in, at least in like that sort of territory, just because Wemby is supposed to be that guy, and they do have Greg Popovich. They're no longer trying to lose, I assume, and hopefully all those young guys that they kind of overplayed last year get a little bit of hair on their chest and grow up a little bit.
This is more of a casual. Wemby's supposed to be that guy, therefore play in. It's like most of us are expecting Wemby's offense to like at least not be dominant out of the gate at the absolute least. More likely than not, it's kind of a slow but noteworthy progression as the year goes along. Defense is where he's going to make the immediate impact. But, other than a defensive swing and improvement, I'm not expecting the Spurs to change much. I don't think Wemby's offense is necessarily going to boost their offense from what it was before all that dramatically. Maybe more Vassell will do that, but I'm only expecting a defensive improvement. Otherwise, not much.
Yeah,
in the first year, obviously.
Also, for some additional context, the bar to make the play-in last year in both conferences, coincidentally, the bar to make the play-in tournament was 40 wins. If you didn't get to 40 wins, you didn't make the play-in tournament. The Spurs won 22 games last year. I'm as high on Wemby as like the rest of the general population right now. I don't think Wemby being drafted is going to immediately win them 18 more games. It could happen, but I just don't see that happening. It just seems I don't even have that happening for the Rockets, who have more like proven talent. I don't even see them winning 40 games this year. It's just that's a big jump to make.
Yeah. Just to be abundantly clear, I said, flirting with the play-in. My ultimate rank is 22, so that's out of the play-in, unless I'm just wrong about that for some horrible mathematical reason. Okay, but yeah, I could just see a world where they win 35 to 38 games and look like a promising team who might have made a little postseason push should they have given Victor all 82. If Victor's really that guy.
I could perhaps see 35.
Yeah,
on the best case, though. That's best case.
Terribly unrealistic.
Yeah. But you mentioned the Houston Rockets, and that is our next team at 27.
That's where I had them.
Wow.
Yes, it is where you had them. I had them at 30, and Alex, you had them at 23. So once again, and this is another tiebreaker scenario.
Swing.
Yeah, so ranging from all the way to being the 7th worst team to the worst team in our opinion. Fellas,
I think it's really weird.
I
think it's really weird to see a team that wasn't the worst team last year get notably better, regardless of if we think about how good those moves actually work out in the long term. Houston just objectively has a better roster, objectively has a better coach. There's just no way they would be the worst team in the league. A lot of things would have to go wrong for that to happen. But
what if every team in the NBA got better?
Every single
one.
There are teams that got worse, and I actually have a good amount of teams that got worse.
Yeah, there are a good amount of teams that got worse, and a very few that improved as much as Houston did. To be clear, it's not like Houston went from like garbage to like contender, but in terms of just actually improving a team over one offseason to be a better basketball team, they were pretty high up there in terms of overall wins added, I guess. If anything, I just find ranking these teams fucking hard.
Right.
And there are a couple. The next 3 teams above them are Eastern Conference teams, so it's not even like that relevant to where they rank in playoff standings. But I expect a leap from Jalen Green. Fred VanVleet is good, if not always the most efficient in the world. Dylan Brooks sucks, but he's going to be out of the rotation by the end of the year, so it's fine.
I think the reason I had them as high as I did is because I think people are putting a little too much in like their off-season moves, like a little too much stock in their off-season moves, and kind of looking at the players that they signed and being like, oh, those players aren't good enough to really cause them much improvement in the win column. And to me, it's less about the players that they signed and more about coaching change and then also just general development. Like, I think Jalen Green is going to be noticeably better this year overall. I think Jabari Smith Jr. is going to have a significantly better season now that he has a coach that actually knows how to use him as more than just a spot-up shooter. Şengün is hopefully going to at least be able to be hidden on the defensive end and probably have his two-man game with Jalen Green utilized a little bit better. They just drafted a really, really good player who was like definitely, as high as top 3, maybe even top 2 on the draft boards for a lot of people. And then like Tari Eason's a good player. Like they have a good team. This team isn't a terrible team. It's just I don't think a lot of it really fits together, and I think they maybe jumped the gun. But I had them 23, and that felt reasonable because they also, like the Spurs, won 22 games last year. I don't think they're gonna be a 40-win team. That might be a little ambitious, but 37, 38 wins. That seems reasonable to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what?
Yeah.
You guys have convinced me. I was being a hater. I'm going to move the Rockets up here to 26. And
Is that how this
the
works?
The math did the... Yeah, we can't change the math.
Well, I already moved them. So 27 is going to be the Portland Trail Blazers. 26 is the Rockets. How we feel about the Trailblazers. I think Scoot Henderson, like Wemby, is going to make them a lot better than you might think, but ultimately it's kind of a hodgepodge of what the fuck going on.
Clearly, I have the highest ranking for them here. I've kind of bought into this Portland team being pretty good early, like better than people are anticipating, because I really like their starting lineup a lot. There's basically no depth, but
do you care to tell us what the starting lineup is, Jacob?
Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton.
Gotcha. Cool.
I think that's a pretty solid, well-rounded lineup. I like the guard play, obviously. I like that pretty much everybody is athletic, like pretty fucking athletic in that lineup. And I think DeAndre Ayton in a new environment is going to thrive. So I actually ranked them 22.
Yeah, you had them 22. Alex, you had them 29, and I had them at 28.
Haters.
So.
In hindsight, I probably would have had them higher. I had, probably way more teams than I should have over them. I wouldn't have had them quite as high as Jacob did.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to redo it, I probably would have had them instead of 29th. I could have probably put them 23, 24.
Hell yeah.
I'm still flirting with the Rockets territory. Same echelon of mid as the Rockets, So.
Less mid than the Rockets probably, but simply because they have more like proven players and, winning play. Like DeAndre Ayton, Rob Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, Jeremy Grant, like that's 3 very solid players right there. And then you take into account like Anthony Simons is definitely proven he's very good at this point. Scoot Henderson is most likely going to be very good. Shaden Sharp is, we'll see what he ends up being, but he's probably going to improve semi-significantly this year. So I don't know. If I had to re-rank them, I would have definitely had them over the Rockets. But yeah, hindsight's 2020.
Time Lord, I forgot, will also be on the bench. So yes, I don't know how long Malcolm Brogdon's actually going to be in Portland, but
you know what? You guys have convinced me.
Well, okay, man. What's happening here?
Well, that's what the math said anyway, so.
Right. You got to believe in the math. The Hornets somehow ended up at 25. I have so little faith in the Hornets, even if
when
LaMelo
comes back,
it's sort of the opposite
Hornets
of
are
Cade.
solid. That's the answer. When LaMelo plays, the Hornets are solid.
That's all there is to it.
But they waived Kai Jones.
43 games. They won 43 games when he was healthy last. It's like that's a decent team.
Yeah, I think LaMelo's pretty really underrated. And I've always felt as though the coaching situation there never even really fully embraced him. It seems like it's time to fully embrace him, but then he gets hurt all the time. So if you get a healthy season from him, they should be solid.
Do we have any reasonable player comparisons from NBA's past for LaMelo Ball? Is he more of like a unique case in
Anything is
the
just
point
like
guard history?
tall, less aggressive Trae Young.
Yeah, that seems reasonable, I guess.
There really aren't a lot of examples of like playmaking guards that were also like lighting it up from outside and like taking super high volume threes. I guess maybe James Harden, but James Harden's obviously way better inside the arc. So,
I just saw that prompt on one of our old friend Mojo's podcast, The Deep Threes. One of their YouTube shorts said, "What's a good player comparison for LaMelo Ball?" And the end result ended up being what Lonzo Ball is supposed to be when he was coming out of college.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, Jason Kidd, but replace the defense with like, I don't know, somebody shooting.
Does this factor in Miles Bridges being part of the team, being this high, ranking them this high up, or is him not being part of the team
I mean,
most likely?
Ideally he's not part of the team. In which case,
but if he was, he'd
I
help
would
them
have
win
them
more.
lower, but yes, right.
Gotcha.
He should not play in the NBA again. I mean, the dude should be facing like legal consequences.
Mhm.
That hasn't happened. So,
By the way, I saw a couple of comments, and I'm kind of feeling it on my end. Alex might be like a tad quiet.
Turn it up.
I've turned up.
Just like that. And turn up for the Jazz, number 24, the Utah Jazz. Another
Utah
mid-ass team
Jazz.
with Larry Markkinen.
That is
at the
exactly
top.
where I had them.
It sure was. Jacob, you had them at 23. I did 27. I have less faith in the Jazz than you guys, but I'm a casual, so
Larry Markkinen's really fucking good.
That's sort
Walker
of the end of the story with the
pretty
team.
Good. I like their rookies going into this year. I like the team a lot. I like the direction they've taken, but like now's not the time for them to be that good.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it's not a bad team. It's just I don't think they're gonna be actively trying to win a ton.
They're not really gonna go for it like that.
Yeah, and they got John Collins too, which whatever you
It's
think
weird.
about John Collins, he is a basketball player that can like do stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, up to this point, what teams do you think are, best place, worst place, missing? We've done the bottom 6 or 7 teams in the league. Are you surprised that no one's here yet? Are you surprised that someone showed up at all?
I think I might move the Pistons up 2 spots.
I had the Pistons 27, so yeah, I would have probably. I'm not saying we should change it, but yeah, I agree with that. That's around where I had.
I gotta say, I ranked the Magic too fucking low. So when the Magic come up and they're too low, I apologize for the negative curve.
Don't worry, they're coming soon. First, we got the Nets, who I figured you guys might be a little surprised didn't come up yet. I was the one who actually no, Alex was the one who ranked them highest. He put them at 22. I had them at 23. Jacob had them at 26. Jacob, you not a Mikal Bridges believer?
I actually am quite excited for this to become Ben Simmons' team because that's definitely what's going to happen. That's the most fun outcome for me anyways, but I don't know. There's not really good offense here. And as we talked about in our hot takes episode, like it's hard to be a good defense when you're a bad team. So like the true potential of that defense probably won't even be fully unlocked for that reason. So it's kind of hard to bet on them putting out like a really competitive product.
I've actually swung opposite from when we last talked on their defense. I actually think this team has the potential to be like one of the best defenses in the NBA. Going up and down their roster, I forgot about some of their free agency acquisitions. And then, like, of course, they're getting Ben Simmons back. But, like, Mikal Bridges, good defender. Dennis Smith Jr. was one of the best guard defenders in the entire league last year. Ben Simmons is coming back, and, I don't know what version of Ben Simmons we're going to get, but hopefully he has, like, a revenge season, and in which case he would be a good defender at minimum.
to be fair, even when he was like bad for the Nets, he was still a positive defender.
Right. They also have Nick Claxton, who is like one of the best
DPOY
defenders
candidate.
in the NBA. It's like he's a DPOY candidate, and I think he's only going to get better. Dorian Finney-Smith is a reliable defender. There's so much good defensive personnel on this roster, and like if they just put it together, they're going to be a good defense. Offensively, I agree. That's where the big hang-up's going to be. They don't really have anyone who's going to like facilitate I mean, you could say it's Ben Simmons
or Spencer Dinwiddie. Those are your options.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to rely on Spencer Dinwiddie as like my primary offensive facilitator. But if Ben Simmons does end up having a big season and kind of stepping into a role as like the guy, then their offensive prospects as a whole probably look a little bit better.
I agree that I'm not like happy about Dinwiddie as a lead creator. I'm just saying that's what Brooklyn did in that, post KD Kyrie time. Spencer Dinwiddie was the point guard, he was the one making plays and shit, but you hope it was a temporary solution.
Yeah. He should not be their lead.
Correct.
That's terrible.
That's why I just feel very poorly about their offense, though, because it's him or Ben Simmons, and I don't feel comfortable betting anything on Ben Simmons until I finally seen it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how Dinwiddie is like the face of crypto bros in the NBA, and his last name sounds like a coin. Like, tell me you wouldn't buy in on some Dinwiddies, dollar sign.
I wouldn't, because it was always a scam, but that's another topic.
Number 22, you asked for it. Here they are, the Orlando Magic. Jacob, you ranked them 28th, albeit regretfully, and Alex and I both had them right at 20. So
I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll say 6 teams that I should have put them over and had them at 22.
20 maybe. I was maybe jumping the gun a little bit because there are teams that you could convince me should be over them, but 20 is like that's right at the like play-in team ceiling that a lot of people are kind of projecting them at. I don't think they're going to make a playoff leap. That seems a little bit premature. But I think right around 20, anywhere between 20, 22, I would have been fine with having the Magic, but I think they're probably going to be a play-in team.
My real big hang-up with them is the three-point shooting. Like, their main lineup doesn't really have great outside shooting. Like, that lineup that I retweeted your post about, it's a really fun and interesting lineup, but, like, Franz is your best outside threat, maybe. Suggs. Cole Anthony can shoot threes, obviously, but other than that, like, it's definitely a little thin in terms of three-point shooting. I expect them to be a pretty good defense, and I expect them to be good inside the arc. But, not being a good shooting team doesn't often yield good results. I would know it, unfortunately.
I'm not really as concerned about their three-point shooting because there were 3 teams that made the play-in tournament last year that they shot either better than from 3 or the same amount. Like, they shot 34.9% from 3 last year. They shot better than Miami, Toronto, and they shot the same three-point percentage as the Lakers last year. So, like, it's hard for me to imagine they got worse shooting from the perimeter. So, to me, that doesn't really hold them back a ton.
All right.
I just think that Paolo making the leap from being a guy who's like inefficient but putting up 20 to has a year of NBA experience under his belt could potentially be one of the bigger sophomore leaps that we've seen out of an NBA player because, obviously it's just preseason, but from what little preseason I have seen, it's been a lot of Paolo Banchero, like huge dunks.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could see more of that during the regular season, plus another year of continuity with them. Plus Wendell Carter Jr., I think, is starting to expand his range, shoot a little bit more threes. If I remember this tweet I saw correctly, he shot like 44% on corner threes last year, seemingly taking a higher volume from outside just the corner. So if they could just put together a couple things, I think that they could make the play-in pretty confidently, maybe surprising people and actually to secure a spot in the regular playoffs. Not right now.
Yeah,
he will
Wendell Carter
eventually,
Jr.
though.
shot 35.9 or 35.6% from three last year on 225 attempts. That's like, yeah, he can shoot threes slightly below league average, which like for a center you'll take that because it makes the defense honor you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's just the way it is. So moving on from the Magic, we got the Raps. Fellas, are the Toronto Raptors good, or is Pascal Siakam getting moved 3 weeks into the season and then it's Tank City? They're probably the most confusing team in the NBA right now, and by proxy, kind of one of the least relevant, I suppose.
The Raptors annoy me just to think about. Like, I hate even giving them time because they have no direction. If you're not going to have a direction, you're just wasting everybody's time. They have good NBA players. So they'll be a good team if they choose to play those players and not blow it up. But there's nothing to be excited about in any capacity.
I don't know if I'd go that
Maybe
far,
Scotty
but
Barnes being better. Well, other than that, who gives a shit?
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, there's a world they make the playoffs. There's a world where they're like, fifth worst record in the NBA. I don't really know what their direction is. It's, whatever. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to try and be super like analytical with them. It's like, well, we've seen them be good before with a roughly similar looking roster, similar core group of guys, and we've seen them be bad with this core group of guys. I don't know what they do now.
I'll say this as well. They're already a bad 3-point shooting team, and they went from their best 3-point shooter as their starting point guard, Fred VanVleet, to Dennis Schroeder. So they got a lot worse in an area they were already bad in. So that's not ideal.
Dennis Smith Jr. or not? Dennis Schroeder had a pretty good season last year.
Not going to be high volume though.
Right.
And he's never been a very consistent 3-point shooter. You can get times where he's pretty knocked down and the times where it's like he has no fucking idea how to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Well, confusing dinosaurs aside, number 20, we have the Chicago Bulls, if you want some confusing mammals in your life. How do we feel about the Bulls? We all ranked them the same spot at 21.
Mammals.
And somehow they ended up at 20. I don't know how that math works, but
Yeah,
that's what happened.
Wait, where did
So
I
who
put
had the
them?
Raps higher then? Or where did everyone have the Raptors? Because this doesn't make sense.
I had the Raptors at 20.
Rudy,
And the
where'd you have
Bulls
the
at
Raptors?
21.
24.
I had them at 25. Where did everyone have the Bulls?
I had 21.
Yeah, every
Well,
single
out of
one
the
of us had
21.
21. It's time I confess my lie. Rather than weighing my opinion at half, I weighted it double. So this is
What?
my podcast. And
We need to
What?
restart then. Okay, if we're going to do this,
I
we
don't
need to at least
believe
make
that.
it equal.
I don't believe that. He's lying.
no one. By comparison, the scores with as far as like ranking positions, no one moved more than 2 spots between, either method.
That's pretty significant in the power rankings.
I'll just tell you how many spots they've moved.
I don't understand what's happening. Why would you do this? What's the point? Are you trying to be a villain?
Yeah, I'm confused.
What can I say? I tried to compromise the integrity of the podcast with a silly little prank.
Why?
Well, it's funny for me. I'm having fun. This is what you
I don't
guys
give
get
a
with
fuck. Let's talk about the
entrusting me
Bulls.
with the results of this.
Yes, clearly we shouldn't give you power. That's the point you're trying to prove.
Right.
The Chicago Bulls, again, just who gives a fuck? We're in the who gives a fuck territory, apparently, because the Raptors and the Bulls, who cares? They're both a directionless franchises, and I hate talking about directionless franchises.
So all of us had the Bulls missing the play-in at 21. That seems a little kooky to me. I could
That's
see
not a
world where
huge drop off. They were in the play-in last year.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they were the 9 seed.
You're telling me that Javon Carter doesn't move the needle for you?
No.
All right.
Also, I don't know why everyone's so focused on Javon Carter because I think freaking Torrey Craig is a bigger addition.
You're just the biggest Torrey Craig fan on NBA YouTube for real.
Okay, he's a really big, versatile defender who hits his threes. That's the most valuable type of role player to have.
Speaking of valuable role players, the Pacers, they got Buddy Hield on the block. We got him at 19
Yeah, I don't
in these power
understand that.
rankings.
I like Buddy Hield there. I don't know why every team that has ever had Buddy Hield has been so insistent on not having one of the best 3-point shooters of all time on their roster. It's really, really weird. I had the Pacers at 19. What do you know?
Oh, right on the money.
I also had the Pacers at 19.
Look at us go. I had them at
We all feel pretty
17.
highly about them because I know there's definitely people that wouldn't put the Pacers that high, but I really like everything they've built with Halliburton. Good. There's been an emphasis on like giving him weapons, utilizing his playmaking as much as possible. So I like that, even if it is a little too much. Everything is Halliburton's job, but they should be a pretty good and especially a fun offensive team.
He needs to Hallett bare arms.
It's going to be terrible.
You're a little off sync, Alex.
Oh yeah, our favorite thing about what happens roughly 30 minutes after streaming sometimes is Alex falls out of sync. But I seem to confuse you a little bit with my pun there. I'll try to avoid the confusing puns more this episode.
I didn't hear what it was.
I'm not gonna reiterate. And we're back. But yeah, Pacers could be good, but most likely still mid, just like a ultimate league pass team. Really, as far as I'm
okay. Yeah, that's true. Very fun.
Let's get past the mid. Let's
get
to the teams that are actually exciting to talk
all right,
about.
There's a lot of there's a lot of middle agreeing in this like teens territory. Like a lot of us have very similar rankings. The Pelicans up here next at 18.
I'm happy to let you
18,
get away with
both.
Zards.
You had 17.
I'm happy to let you get away with Zards. Cans is criminal. That's just
well, I
worst.
put the apostrophe.
Oh
so
yeah, that makes it so much better.
Do you prefer Pels?
Yes, it's shorter.
I blame the Pelicans like as a brand. They should have never became the Pelicans
by the apostrophe.
I mean, the Pelicans make sense. There's a lot of Pelicans in New Orleans.
Yeah, state bird. It's a big, scary bird.
Is everyone afraid to take the Gators just because Florida? Because like that's such a good animal to have be a mascot, and we're gonna let
I think
just
it's
them have it.
trademark issues.
That's some bullshit. Because alligators are way cooler than fucking pelicans. No offense to any Pelican fans out there, but that said, this team is pretty heavily predicated on Zion.
ESPN's like 58th best player in the league or something like that.
Dude, I fucking hate player rankings being based on injury or health or whatever. I think you should just rank them based on what they're able to do when they're there, but that's a whole other tangent. I think they end up kind of middle of the pack here because they could go either way. There's no Zion, then they probably stink. If there is Zion, then they could be literally the number 1 seed because they were at one point when he was healthy.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. It's like, is Zion healthy? But on paper, they have a solid team. They were in the play-in last year. I mean, if everything goes right and Zion's healthy, they could be a top 6 seed. They could be a top 4 seed. Who knows? But I need to see Zion play a healthy season. That's all there is to it. I'm not gonna keep getting excited about them if he's continuously just not
kind of the Clippers thing. It's just like, okay, when it happens, then I'll talk about it. But until then, I'm not going to keep hoping for the health to happen.
Just a healthy Zion is a social construct. It's not real. We've never seen it before. But during the early part of last season, when Zion was healthy, albeit early season basketball is a lot different than the rest of the season basketball. Weren't they like the number 1 team in the league with like a really good defense and a really, really, really good offense?
I think they were number one in the West. I don't know if they were the number one record, but I do know that I'm quite confident if Zion stayed healthy, they would have maybe not maintained the 1 seed, but finished as a top 3 seed.
Well, for now, they're stuck at 18.
Like, they're just such a ridiculously well-built team around Zion. It's just the thing that they're built around is never there.
The Hawks are at 17. Are we a bunch of certified Trae Young haters, or is this a little bit deeper
No.
than that?
I had them
I
16.
think I had him at 18. I think lately I've come more around to like Trae just being super underrated just because people find him weird. And it's pretty much as simple as that. I really like that they finally moved on from John Collins. That's a divorce that needed to happen years ago. And I'd especially be excited for them if they fucking traded Clint Capella.
Yeah, if they trade Clint Capella, I'd probably have them even higher. Not that Clint Capella is bad. We've clarified this before. Clint Capella is still a good player, but they don't need Clint Capella because they have Onyeka Okongwu, and they're paying Clint Capella, what is it, like $20 million, something like that? It's like, trade Clint Capella and like get more depth somewhere else, or just get like a backup center and save money so you can like fill things out in free agency. It's like there's no real reason for them to have Clint Capella aside from like there's not a better option right now for them to trade for. But if that became available, they need to do that because it just makes way more sense.
Yep.
Yeah. The 16 team is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, Alex, here is where I will confront you personally. In your rankings, your fandom has it has no integrity anymore. You're not an OKC fan. You ranked Oklahoma City lower than the Minnesota Timberwolves for this upcoming season, and you were the only one amongst us three to do that. Why is that as the Oklahoma City fan?
How does that hurt my integrity?
Yeah, I don't
The Timberwolves had a better record than their Thunder last year.
Because if you're a real fan, then you would
older
believe in
team.
your team. You would believe in your team
I'm
to
not
an
a real
irrational
fan, like,
degree.
I'm an unbiased assessor of talent here. Like, I'm not going to just put the Thunder higher because I'm a
Why
fan
aren't
of
you
them.
acting like
integrity.
I do with the Grizzlies?
That's basically what I'm getting at.
I honestly genuinely thought about putting the Grizzlies down like 4 spots from where I was going to, just to adjust for the curve of whatever bullshit you were going to put in there.
No, that's reasonable. The Timberwolves, are we believers in the Twin Towers there? Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns finally making it work?
I had them at 13.
I had them at 16. So, once again, perfectly lined up. I think they're going to improve. I just think there's a handful of teams that will improve more, or we're just already better. Like, I don't think they're going to improve to a degree where they're like jumping into top 5 in the conference, for example.
I had them 13, not because of what I expect their record to be, but like this is power ranking. So like if you're encompassing all 30 teams, even if their record isn't better than say like, you know, I'm just trying to think of whatever teams I had below them. I think on paper they will be a better team. You know, metrics wise, I think they will be a better team than some teams in the East that have more wins than them. But you know, their win column might look a lot different than some of the teams in the East simply because it's super competitive in the West, and they'll probably take a hit because of that. But for all intents and purposes, I think this team is going to be significantly better this year than they were last year.
Yeah. So Mike Conley I think they were much different. They were, you know, obviously they're, as we talked about last time, their regular season record wasn't like phenomenal with him or anything, but like I just like the fit of that roster so much more than when it was D'Angelo Russell. So I also think like going into a training camp with that team, I'm expecting a leap from Anthony Edwards, and I've especially liked in the preseason what I've seen from Cat. That they seem to be more deliberate about his usage, which is important. So, yeah, I think they're going to be pretty damn good.
I used to have a lot of faith in them, honestly, but I've lost all of it.
I have a trade idea locked and loaded for whenever we start doing trade deadline episodes. I'm not going to say what it is. I'm not going to say who it involves, but if the time comes down the road for the Timberwolves where something needs to change, I have just the most devious little trade idea cooked up already.
You're going to have to tell me after this because I'm interested.
So it's one that can't happen until after January 15th because of contract and trade restriction stuff. That's a little bit of a hint, but I won't say anything else.
All right. Well, who we got next?
15th is the Dallas Mavericks, the Kyrie Irving and them squad.
I had them 18th.
Yeah, Jacob, you had them 11th. I had them 15th. So
wow, so we got a wide spectrum here. Why don't you believe in the Mavericks, Alex?
It's not that I don't believe in the Mavericks. It's that I just don't really know the talent and like the depth and whatnot. They've got players who are basketball players now. I think last year they were playing like kind of some garbage and their hand was kind of forced. But this year I think they're going to be, in terms of talent on the roster, it's going to be a better team. I'm not saying that like Luka Ball is bad. I think my bigger concern is, are you sacrificing some of the advantages of like having Kyrie Irving by playing Luka Ball like with Kyrie Irving on the floor? It's like, okay, you do have Kyrie there, but if he's just kind of like a spot up shooter, like play finisher, it's like, yeah, that's a really good play finisher, but are you really getting the most out of Kyrie? And yeah, you stagger their minutes and stuff, and it's going to help. They'll see the floor sometimes with each other, and then sometimes one of them will be running with the bench unit. But the point is, while they did get better players, it's not going to matter if they're not getting the most out of the better players that they got, which is kind of my hang up with them. And then also health, like it is a concern with Luka. He's already dealing with like calf injuries during the play-in turn or during preseason games. It's like, that's not good. It's concerning to see that happening. It's the preseason.
Joe B in the chat gave us $2 to say, safe to say Jason Kidd's seat is hot this season? ? Thank you for the donation, Joe B.
Probably.
I don't know if it's that hot, but it's not cold. That's how I put it, I guess. I will say, I think pretty highly of the Mavericks because I think with Luka and Kyrie, regardless of like if we're just talking about like from the perspective of contending, Luka Ball ultimately cutting them off from that, I think could be plausible. But for at least in terms of them just being a very good regular season team, I think with Luka and Kyrie, you're going to have a great offense one way or the other. Not to mention they've got a good amount of catch and shoot options on the perimeter. And then defensively speaking, I think they've gotten some solid defensive personnel, especially obviously much improved from what it was post Kyrie trade or even before that. And we've seen Jason Kidd take not amazing defensive personnel and turn it into a very good defense. So I think there's a good chance the Mavericks end up being like, passable on defense and excellent on offense. And it results in like a 50, at least something close to that win season. Because of course, 50 win seasons are harder and harder to come by, especially in the West. But I really like Dallas, and I think they're going to be pretty good.
They're like high ceiling, low floor for me.
Yeah, that's
how
fair.
I feel.
David Williams says Mavs don't have Jalen Brunson anymore. They should be lower. I think you're
that Kyrie
about a year
guy,
behind, Butter.
Yeah, that Kyrie guy can't score, so they've lost that ability.
All right, and at 14, it's finally starting to enter into the territory of like pretty good teams. We got the 76ers. Kind of a bad example there, but they do have the MVP who had a historic scoring season last year. However, they are losing their, bearded, whiny point guard. It does leave room for Tyrese Maxey to improve. Fellas, are the 76ers wasting their time here, or are they still a potential championship team in Joel Embiid's career?
Even with James Harden or like without James Harden, whatever you trade him for, like obviously they might get decent return for him, but assuming they trade him for, whatever, this roster's still not good.
Mm-hmm.
Like Patrick Beverley is going to be getting significant minutes, and like with the Timberwolves, Patrick Beverley was like, whatever, you could make the argument that he was, a productive player, but since then, Patrick Beverley has not been good. They still have old man PJ Tucker, who's going to be brought out there in a wheelchair every single night, and he's, they're going to be pumping him full of caffeine and Adderall to try and get him to stay on the court without keeling over because he's 50 years old at this point. Danny Green is out of retirement to allegedly play basketball again. Tobias Harris, decent player. DeAnthony Melton, decent player. They got Kelly Oubre, Mo Bamba.
Not good.
Like, yeah, maybe. We'll see what happens. They might be able to do something. Tyrese Maxey, yeah, even if you're betting on a Tyrese Maxey all-star leap, which I think is entirely within the realm of possibility, is that enough for them to be like higher than where we have them? I just don't think it is.
If Joel Embiid was not on this team, they would easily be 30th in my power rankings.
Easily?
That's how I would put it. Yeah.
I wouldn't have them that low, but
Really?
yeah, they're not the worst team in the NBA without Joel Embiid, in my opinion.
Tobias Harris
Tyrese
is your
and
second
Tobias.
option.
Yeah, I mean that puts you out of the bottom 5 with Tyrese and Tobias. I think
Well, is
that's
James
better
Harden
than...
still there too? That's like that's.
I was talking without James Harden as well
okay.
because
I mean,
I'm
without James Harden.
it's without James Harden. I guess that's was confusing, but like also I just want to say because people are talking about the Sixers being the 7th seed. This is power rankings. It's not necessarily about who's going to get the most wins in the regular season. If the Sixers were like the 4 seed, cool, I wouldn't be surprised by that. But like, I would genuinely think higher of the teams that are above them. I actually had them ranked 1 spot lower than this, but the roster's thin. No James Harden, James Harden not being there is bad. At least in terms of where they are now. Now, I still believe that the Sixers could just hold out this year and score in free agency, and that'd be great for them. But at least in terms of how they are right now, they're a team that has Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris are cool basketball players, and then after that, it gets really, really rough.
Yeah.
I think DeAnthony Melton's going to carry them to a first seed, personally. Grizzlies legend. Number 13, the OKC Thunder. Alex, you had them ranked 15th, and I had them ranked 9. Jacob, you had them 12, so this is right about the actual average, more or less.
The OKC Thunder fan puts them the lowest. That's
People are like getting way ahead of themselves.
Really?
Yeah.
You feel that way?
They're going to be better this year. No doubt about it. But I'm like, some people have been very, very premature with their expectations. I've seen stuff on, there were 2 like big talking heads that were like, they're going to be a top 3 seed in the West. And I was like,
Woj called Chet a MVP candidate down the line and was just like saying they got 4 All-Stars on their roster.
I mean, if they were the 3rd seed, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to me, but I'd probably say more like 5. And like they won 40 games last year, right?
Yeah, 40.
Yeah, I think I could see like a 7-8 game improvement, especially with Chet, and then internal improvement just from being young. I really like OKC, and I think they're going to be very fun, and I think in many ways they might end up changing basketball. And I don't know. I feel like there are definitely some nerds that are overrating this team, but the general consensus of NBA fans probably hasn't like truly given OKC much consideration whatsoever. And I think they're going to surprise a lot of people for that reason. But those that know, know.
Yeah, I have them 15, but like, 15 for some teams could be seen as like a bad thing. But having them 15, just because it's the lowest out of us 3, like, it's still theoretically top 8 in each conference, which used to just be a playoff spot outright, which I see them making the playoffs comfortably this year. Even if they have to go through the play-in tournament, I think they take care of business. And don't get me wrong, I think they're going to be significantly better. It's just the rest of the Western Conference is really, really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I actually felt like I was kind of holding back a little bit by ranking them 9th on my order personally, because
That's crazy.
like I get that like everyone else is like really
much
gassing them
Kool-Aid
up
you
lately,
sipping?
but I guess I'm just drinking all the Kool-Aid because Jalen could get better. Chet is going to be meaningfully better than not having anybody at that
Everybody
position.
can get better. Everybody's young.
Yeah, exactly. If Josh Giddey becomes the player that like my casual brain thinks that he actually is, but isn't quite yet, then this team is going to be really, really thick in terms of talent at the top end, and then they
Really
have
thick.
enough depth to be decent. So if all the cards go right for the Thunder, I think they could do excellent, like you say, and even win home court advantage. But ultimately, 13th feels about right to me. Next, we got.
I think their ceiling is 4 seed, personally.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
reasonable.
All things go right, 4 seed.
The Knicks are 12th on our order here. Alex, you had them 12th, or no, excuse me, I had them 12th. You had them 8th, Alex, and then Jacob had them 14th. Alex, very high on the Knicks, amongst us at least.
They're a good team. They're a good team.
I think they're a lot better of a team with Josh Hart as well.
They won 47 games last year, which there were only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There were 7 teams that won more games than them last year, and I had them 8th. And I'm like, they're a good team. I don't know how else to say it. They're a good basketball team.
Yeah. I don't know. In terms of like actually where
Homer take. Someone said Homer take. I'm not from New York. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're confusing Alex for Desmond here in the chat.
Yes.
he's the Knicks fan of this chat.
I mean, all the teams that I have above them are in the Western Conference. Otherwise, standings-wise, it's the same as it was before in the East. Yes, Desmond, they could be a 3 seed. However, after the top 2, it's kind of a toss-up. So, like, okay.
Yeah. For me, it's just they're the Knicks, so it's hard to have like an actual, even remotely unbiased point of view. They just feel like a cursed franchise who, are bound to have bad luck.
Honestly,
even if that means their best player being kind of ass in a weird way, where a lot of the fans of the team seem not to like having Julius Randle on their squad for some reason or another.
Well, it's not for no reason. It's because he's very frustrating. But the Knicks, I mean, it kind of came down to like, and at least for the East, it comes down to them versus the Cavs, and obviously they beat the brakes off of the Cavs last year. However, I do think, hopefully at least, Cleveland would show up a lot more prepared this time around, maybe a little bit more prepared for the bright lights. And I do think that I don't know if they addressed their wing problem, but they definitely made it a less significant open bleeding wound than as it was before.
Yeah, with the Knicks, it's just hard for me to like be super low on them because we saw them like make the Heat series somewhat of a series. I mean, it went to 6 games, and they took care of business against the Cavs like handedly. I think they have a year of continuity under their belt. Jalen Brunson is likely going to be even better than he was last year. And in my opinion, he played at an all-star caliber level last year. They made improvements on the roster, getting Josh Hart. In terms of net rating post all-star break, the New York Knicks had the 7th best net rating in the entire NBA at plus 4.7. They're simply put, they're a good team.
You've convinced me I should have put them higher, but it is what it is.
You know what? If we have a revision period, they'll probably end up higher. Number 11, we got the Kangs, the sexiest hipster team in the Western Conference. Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, really Domantas Sabonis. I'm from Boston.
I will leave this podcast right now.
But we got them 11th in our rankings. Personally, I see them doing a little bit of a backslide, but who knows? Maybe they'll improve and get that defense a little bit
I
tighter.
had them 13th.
I had them 7th.
Really? That's really high.
I'm pretty high on the guy that they brought over from the EuroLeague. He won EuroLeague MVP last year. He's like a very, very, very good player.
Isn't he a
and
point
they probably
guard?
got him for pennies on the dollar.
Isn't that a point guard though? I might
No,
be.
he's a wing.
I'm thinking of OKC's guy.
Yeah, he's a guard.
I'm
So
not
we got
sure.
we got 2 Pablo Prigionis in the house this season.
Also, Keegan Murray's probably going to be better.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And then it's just like they're a good team to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, the big thing for them is like they have a contender level offense. There's no question about that. It's just that the defense is not amazing. And I don't know if they really will ever be able to be, but I could also see them improving just by, just effort and more attention to that area of the floor. Their first year actually being good, they're kind of just so caught up in the holy fuck, we're good of it to like really address things. But now, more of a like, all right, we're going into year 2 now. We can be a little bit more deliberate about everything. But I don't know anything about their overseas guy.
He's good. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I always learn about players when they're in the NBA. I'll learn when they're there.
Repping big coach of the year energy, Mike Brown. The Cavs are our 10th team. How we feel about Cleveland this year? Personally, I think that they're going to have another year to grow together. Maybe Evan Mobley as an offensive hub is something that's going to work out a little bit better for them this year. We've been seeing that in the preseason, and maybe just maybe they'll actually have some playoff success.
I think is it Strus or Struss for Max? Strus? Okay. Max Strus and Georges Niang. I think both of those guys were pretty damn solid additions for them because they're just going to hit the open shot. Obviously they're not great players, but the offense was just so heavily predicated purely on, if their guards are not creating, and also if their guards are not shooting because their wings couldn't shoot, just having another player on the floor that can shoot the 3 is going to make a big difference for them. But I have my concerns about Evan Mobley. That's ultimately what it is. Is it something so funny? Fuck, Alex, holy shit.
Yeah. Someone gave us $2 to say, Rusty, are you on a porn set? My Knicks are top 6.
I was like, is there something that fucking funny about me saying that Max Strus can shoot? Because he can.
No, it wasn't Max Strus. It was Niang. I don't know. Niang, I'm kind of just like, yeah, maybe. He can't shoot
Georgia's
threes.
Fan.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. I think
he's good last year.
If you're giving him significant minutes, your team has a problem. But whatever.
That's why he was so
he
good
shot
for the
40%
Sixers.
on 5 attempts from 3 the past 2 seasons. Now, should he be playing?
He is a good 3-point shooter. He can do that.
Hey, he's a big body.
Mr. I don't value guys that can only shoot threes.
That is your tagline.
Brother, the problem is wing shooting. I'm talking about fixing the problem. Suck my dick.
I know. I had them 11th, so them ending up at 10 is like, yeah, that makes sense.
Number 9, we got the Los Angeles Clippers. Just like the healthy Zion, the Los Angeles Clippers are a social construct. Another line from
I chose
the
to
deep
rank
three.
them a little higher just because, I do especially like this version of the Clippers roster healthy, but every year it's just a hypothetical. I like a lot of what the roster looks like right now, everyone healthy, but that's probably not going to fucking happen. But I can't just put them in the mud because they're never healthy, but maybe you can.
Yeah,
I ranked them 11, so if that's the mud for the Clippers, then I guess they're in it.
It's the mud for having Kawhi and Paul George on your team.
Well, I wonder if this is the year that the Clippers finally fully regret the SGA Paul George / parentheses Kawhi Leonard trade.
I mean,
because, they really
I think
haven't
they
gotten much from
already
it.
do. I mean, like obviously, that's a every GM in the league is pulling a trigger on putting that team together. It only makes sense to do that. But that said, if they didn't and just stuck with what they had and went with a traditional rebuild, they probably would have been sitting very pretty right now. We'd probably be talking about them how we are OKC.
They'd have Scoot Henderson and a World of Dreams. Number
And
8,
Shaq.
we got the Miami Heat.
Don't say where I had them.
Oh,
Please.
don't? Okay.
I am respectfully asking you not to say where I had them.
I will do that. I will honor that request.
Well, if I say where I had them,
Don't worry. The formula
Which
is a
is-
mystery.
which is higher, I had them at 5. I have felt lately that I think we're maybe overblowing a little bit the Max Strus, Gabe Vincent thing, because the Heat will find people. The Heat tend to find people. I really like their rookie, the 17th pick, I think he was. And they had that one dude, I don't remember what his fucking name was, who just shot the lights out of the ball in his first game. I don't know. I trust them. I trust them to find the pieces. And also, I think the true contenders category, I think it's less deep than it was beforehand. So, yeah, I still like the Heat ultimately. And Tyler Hero is a good player, and he's going to hopefully be there for the postseason.
I had them at 12. I'll say it. I had them at 12.
I mean, I imagine you're factoring in regular season performance quite a bit there, just because.
A big part of it for me is just they lost key pieces. Yes, they have young guys who, theoretically are going to contribute at some level from day one. They were a play-in team last year, and I don't think they got better.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's hard for me to put a ton of stock in them as some significant improvement, because they were what seed were they? I'm looking right now. Yeah, they were the 7th seed, and they weren't a bad team, but they're gonna have to kind of figure things out again, and the guys that they have are getting old. Jimmy Butler's getting older. He's still very, very good. I'm not saying Jimmy Butler is not good, but we'll see, if age has any impact this year. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying it is something that is possible. Kyle Lowry is geriatric at this point. It's
I don't understand.
I don't know. I'm not super high on the Heat. I don't think
I'm
they
looking
got
at the fucking
better.
chat. I don't understand how the Miami Heat have become the most controversial team in basketball. It's so weird to think about that being the case, but
It's because Jimmy Butler's emo, bro. It's controversial.
Yeah. I don't know. They've had a fucking winning formula. They've had down years, and I expect them to be better than they were in the regular season for sure, especially coming off of the momentum of this last run. But, if they just lost in round 1 or 2, that would not surprise me whatsoever. And I could especially see a little bit moving them down a bit just for regular season performance. But the Heat have been pretty excellent the past couple of years, and I'm not going to bet against them fully until they stop.
And I will say, in defense of me putting Heat at 12, or the Heat at 12, that's if you're going conference, each conference, that's top 6 in either conference, theoretically, if you're making an even split. So it's I'm not saying they necessarily are going to miss the playoffs or they'll be the 12th in the East. I'm just saying 12th out of 30, that could be a 6 seed. It could be a 10 seed, it could be higher depending on how things shake out. But yeah, I don't think they got significantly better to be higher than some of the guys or some of the teams that are going to be higher than them.
A lot of this, I also just think lesser of some of those teams that are going to be higher than them, like the Suns, for example. But
what about the Warriors? They're the ones that we have ahead of the Heat right now.
I had them at 6.
I had them at 6.
Yeah, I
Where
had
did
them,
you have them?
I had them all the way down at 13 personally.
I just don't feel super
Wow.
comfortable. Wow, that's pretty low. I don't feel super comfortable betting against that trio in full. There are teams that I think are better, but especially younger teams, I'm going to find harder to bet against that trio.
I just
Yeah, I
think
had them at
that
6.
Chris Paul gunks up the works personally.
I
Give me more
don't
Steph
know.
Curry.
Preseason.
I liked what I saw from him in the preseason. I liked how it fit really, really well. It's preseason, so who's to say how well that translates? But I think the fact that there were pretty glowing reviews at the start, it's at least something to take into consideration. And I probably would have put them down like maybe 2 spots lower, if not for that. But ultimately, like, worst case scenario, Chris Paul is one of the best backup point guards in the league, and he doesn't actually play that much with Steph. It's like it's a lot of money to pay for a fucking backup point guard, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Jonathan Kuminga is going to be fantastic this year. So
If Steve
I just
Kerr
think this is a
plays
good
him.
team still. It's still a very good team. They have a top 3 player on the planet right now. Top
Yes,
three,
that's
Kevon
at least.
No, that's also definitely something to consider. If you got Steph.
But
you
the
got
Grizzlies
Steph.
have Ja Morant minus 25 games and Marcus Smart. So that's why they ended up 6th on these power rankings.
That seems fucking high to me.
I had them at 5.
Really?
The Grizzlies have been the number 2 seed in the West 2 years in a row. They've gotten better. They subtracted the player that you say is a net negative, despite him being an all-defensive caliber player. There's no reason to suspect that the Grizzlies won't be excellent this year, except for the fact that they got 3 young guys that got to rotate at the 3 spot instead of a bona fide starter.
I mean, I don't know. 25 games without Ja. I don't know how well they're going to be the Grizzlies
They're
without
35
Ja,
and 19
Tyus.
without Ja over the last 2
Yeah,
seasons.
but that was
They'll
also
be
with
fine.
Tyus.
They'll be fine. Is
Tyus
Tyus Jones
going
to
to
make you a bad team without Ja Morant? I don't think so.
No,
but
it will move you down
ridiculous.
some spots for sure. Also,
but it's only
I
for 25 games. Even if you go from being a 35
okay.
and 19 game without Ja Morant to losing Tyus Jones, do you think losing Tyus Jones takes you from being a 35 and 19, whatever win percentage that is? Do you think that significantly docks you to being like a negative overall team? And
no,
especially over a 25 game span.
No, but it might be closer to 500.
So 500 over 25 games and Ja Morant for the rest of the season.
Can you get
just
off
destroys
of this?
them?
It's okay. Just dial it back a little bit.
Y'all don't want a pod. Y'all don't want a pod.
Someone feels attacked.
I do. I will say this. I do think this is maybe a clash of like philosophies here, because for me, I rank these teams based on just who I think is better. Actually a better basketball team when put to the test between the two. And I do believe at least all but one of these teams are better than them. So
fair enough.
So we have done the first 25 teams.
But yeah, if the Grizzlies were a top seed. If the Grizzlies were a top seed, they've done that multiple times. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I think the big thing you can condemn the Grizzlies about is the way they went out against the Lakers. That was sad and humiliating. So, but that aside, they're an amazing team. I think Jaren's going to take a little bit of a leap this year, and yeah, Grizzlies are good. But for the first 25 teams on this list, do we see any glaring errors in y'all two's opinion that we just absolutely have to adjust? Or
I think the
are we going
Pistons
to
should move up 2 spots.
I don't think we should change anything personally, but there is stuff I would change.
Maybe we can change after we've done the full thing, though.
Yeah.
All right, so we're now entering the top 5. What I would assume to be the bona fide contender echelon, unless you guys have some sort of marginally different opinion. But at number 5, we got the Lakers.
Wow.
LeBron, AD, Rui, and Austin Reeves. These guys are the real deal, according to us.
I had them 4, but
according to you guys, where did you two have them?
I had them 4.
I had them 4. Or no, I had them 6. I had them 6. I read the wrong line.
Okay, interesting.
Alex, do you want to reveal your position? Okay.
You think the Suns are better than the Lakers? I don't understand.
Yes,
that.
yeah. I definitely think.
I mean, Kevin Durant's better than anybody on the Lakers. So, and they have the best player.
I don't know about that. I really just don't. I don't even know if Kevin Durant's the best player on the Suns, to be honest. Didn't look like it last year, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, Devin Booker is quite good, but even so, it's not quite related to the Lakers. What is holding the Lakers back, and what is boosting their championship potential?
They were a fucking absurd defense last year. I think they added depth. I love how versatile the roster is. That's a big thing.
Let's be clear. They were not an absurd defense. They had the 12th best defense in the NBA last year. They were not. I mean,
they were in the postseason.
Okay, but saying that like just last year they were the best.
Okay, yes.
Last
year the Lakers were weird.
They weren't even the best defense in the playoffs. They were the 5th best.
Well, not what I saw. Fucking stat
dork.
dork.
To tell you.
Why don't you watch hoops like a real man?
Without thought.
I watch more hoops than you.
Yes, you do. That's true. I don't know. The defense is still fucking good. We're arguing semantics, but
they lost Mo Bamba.
I think Anthony Davis is a walking top 10 defense.
Pretty sure Mo Bamba suited up for a couple of minutes for the Lakers.
Right. But they did lose him.
But the defense is going to be very good. And then obviously the health of AD and LeBron is the big fucking wild card. I tend to play rankings just unless it's like truly like a Zion level or a Clippers level wild card. I'm not going to adjust to it too significantly. And also, I wanted to point this out, like evaluating last year's Lakers is kind of a fucking nightmare because they were just two different teams at different points in the season. And I really, really, really liked them this last year. One of their biggest issues for me was how much they relied on D'Angelo Russell, but I think they have better alternatives to that now. I also really believe Rui Hachimura is going to have a really good year. Austin Reeves as well. I really like the Lakers roster, and I also like that they are quite an excellent defensive team, whereas a team like Phoenix is not. Obviously, Phoenix has much more offensive firepower, but I like, especially when banking on contenders, defense is nice to have to rely on.
In hindsight, I actually probably would have put them a little bit higher. I don't know if I would have gone all the way up to 5. The big thing that held me back is like, they were kind of punished the way the Clippers and even the Pelicans to a certain extent were punished, where I just think that banking on fully healthy seasons from LeBron and AD, or even just like healthy enough seasons to get them a top seed, it's just like, I don't know. It seems a little unrealistic, and maybe they're healthy for the entire year, but I do think even if you are healthy come playoff time, the lack of time spent playing together is something that hurts, and they did change a lot of this roster up. But that being said, I still think, top 10 in the NBA, I had them 10th. I would probably have them higher. Honestly, the fact that the Lakers have gone from like missing the playoffs recently or not missing the playoffs when LeBron got there, and, they had the championship run, which was, it is what it was. And then after that, they kind of had to put things back together. Mm-hmm. They've done about as good of a job as you possibly can putting things back together.
Yeah, can you imagine saying to like going into 2023, like in January, saying the Lakers are going to the Western Conference Finals?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they've proven they can hang. So, if I could redo it, I'd probably have them 6th. Yeah, 6th. I'd probably have them 6th.
I feel vindicated.
Desmond in the chat says Torian Prince puts them over the tap. Probably one.
I can't emphasize enough, though. I really the roster is so versatile, and that's my favorite thing about it. There's a couple of different versions of lineups that you can run out there to get different results.
Yeah. At number 4, we have the Phoenix Suns.
I agree with that.
That's where I had them.
Yeah. Do you think that the
Oh,
no
there did
true
Jacob
point
left.
guard thing is going to be a problem for them, or do you think that Bradley Beal and Devin Booker are good enough to overcome neither one being like a pass first player by any stretch of the imagination?
I don't
Jordan
believe
Goodwin's
in
going to
true
be
point
starting
guards,
by the end of the
obviously.
season, so it'll be fine.
Oh, so you're going small with the 3 guards over
That's
there?
a hell of a lineup.
I'm being like half serious. I do think Jordan Goodwin is going to be very, very good for them. I don't realistically think he's going to end up starting. But I'm not really super worried about their like lack of a point guard because I think it's just going to be playmaking by committee, and we've seen teams like that have success before. Look at how good the Nets were when they didn't have a point guard. It's like, okay, well, they were still fantastic.
I guess what Nets team are you talking about? Because it had to be
James
after
Harden
James
was injured, but Kevin Durant and Kyrie were still like fantastic.
Yeah, I think Booker, Beal, and Durant are all pretty much on a similar playing field in terms of playmaking ability. And they're all, at least, above average in that department. And I think that's going to be enough. I don't expect them to be like some amazing facilitating team, but the way you make up for that is by having 3 absurdly good bucket getters.
Yeah, Jacob, I would think based on like what I understand about your basketball philosophy, like the personal vision of the game that you have, I figured you'd be higher on the Suns if I ignore the fact that you're just a bona fide Kevin Durant hater.
Well,
because
first
you've
of all,
always advocated.
First of all, I am a bona fide Kevin Durant hater, so that's an important factor here. We can't just throw that to the side.
Right, but you've always advocated for playmaking by committee, not having a John Stockton type, a Rondo type.
That's not true. I advocate for there being multiple playmakers. I think a lead playmaker is perfectly fine. I think when it gets to a John Stockton extreme, or a Luka Doncic extreme, or even a Tyrese Halliburton extreme, or a John Wall extreme, where just it's one guy does all of the playmaking, I think that has its limitations. But also having super talented, like high level playmakers is very impactful. Look who just won the title. So I do think it's an area that could be a weakness for them, but ultimately the Phoenix Suns are going to be a dominant offense. They are too talented not to be. It's ultimately going to come down to defense, and I don't expect their defense to be good enough. That's ultimately what it's going to be. I said ultimately like 4 times in that sentence.
That was your ultimate word choice in that spiel.
Yeah, I think they'll be good. I'm not really as worried about the like no point guard thing, just because of like the amount of teams we've seen be successful despite not having a point guard. Like, look at the Celtics. The Celtics have had years where they're like, oh, they need a real point guard, and yet they've gone to the finals. They've gone to multiple Eastern Conference finals. It's like, okay, how important is a real point guard? Maybe in terms of like actually winning it all, yes, you do need high-level playmaking, but I still think the Suns are a top five team at least, even without a real point guard. The Clippers are another example. They haven't had a real point guard, but still, look at what they've been able to do, even with injuries.
I mean, yeah, but when Kawhi and Paul George play, they are really good. So, yeah, it works. You don't need offenses can be good without being great at distributing. There are other ways to be a good offense.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Boston Celtics. They're our next team at 3. Alex, you ranked them at 2, but Jacob and I both put them 3. I also feel the need to say, because I left it out, Jacob, you ranked the Suns all the way down at 8, whereas Alex had them 4 and I had them 5. But the Celtics,
and I stand by it.
We all agree is a top 3 team in the NBA. I feel like I think
the top 3 is obvious.
Teams, the
top 3 is so obvious. It's the Bucks, Celtics, and Nuggets. Whatever order you want to put them in, it better be those 3.
Yeah, this is definitely the highest tier in the NBA, the S plus, if you will. While I could envision a world where the Suns, Lakers, and Grizzlies have a good shot at the championship, it's really just these the top 3 that people. I
really appreciated the drive-by there, and Grizzlies.
But Celtics, is their defense going to take a step back this year without Robert Williams and Marcus Smart, or is Drew Holiday and Al Horford enough in combination with Derek White?
Yes. Yes.
Not to mention
it's more than
Porzingis.
enough. I think they'll be a better defense than they were
Yeah,
last
they should
year.
be a better deep. Porzingis, dude. Like Robert Williams, free safety type defense. That stuff's very impactful and all that. But first of all, Porzingis can do a lot of that. Maybe not as effectively and maybe not as many blocks as a result. But having his length, having an actual power forward for real instead of just playing Jason Tatum at that position, they're going to have more size. I think their best lineup's going to be with Al Horford in there. Do you disagree?
I think the best version of Jason Tatum is a power forward.
Well, I'm referring to the defensive end of the floor, anyways. Do you also feel that way about his defense? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So do you see? I want to focus in on this a little bit. How do you see Jason Tatum's peak defensive role looking like if he's going to be a power forward? Is he a free safety roaming a la Giannis, or is he more of like a lockdown one-on-one guy who can switch on anybody?
Oh, I think if you do like similar to kind of what the Bucks did with Brook Lopez and I think Jason Tatum is not the rim protector that Giannis is, but I think Jason Tatum is generally a stronger perimeter guy than Giannis is. And the Bucks had a lot of success using Brook Lopez as like the drop defender, and then Giannis was kind of being the free safety. I think when Jason Tatum's able to be that free safety and you have KP as the drop defender, I think that's going to be a huge problem because Jason Tatum, not only he can deter shots at the rim, not saying he's going to get the block numbers that some of the other like help defenders get, guys that operate as that free safety, but when it comes to recovering onto the perimeter, he's going to have a ton of success doing that. And also, like, when players attack closeouts, when he's recovering off of providing that help, he's perimeter-oriented enough and athletic enough that he can recover and still stay in front of his man without getting just completely beat.
Yeah, I really like Boston's defense a ton. But you're the only one that didn't put him a 3. So I presume over Milwaukee.
Yes. I had Milwaukee 3 because like the issue with depth and like which players are better. I think ultimately in terms of rosters, they have generally similar amounts of talent and players. I mean, Giannis is a top 3 player on the planet at least. And, you know, Damian Lillard, when he's healthy, is probably a top 10 player. So
at least 12 minimum.
Yeah. So on paper, they might have a better team, but when you're talking about health and whatnot, which team's going to be healthy, I'm a little more comfortable with a team whose depth has more like maybe unproven young guys, but at least they're young guys that are going to be healthy for a season rather than like a bunch of not very good old men coming off the bench.
I do think all of that is a fair point of view. I'm purely just like Giannis and Dame, the duo.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing.
The duo itself, I think, is just enough for me to squeak them over Boston. And it was also enough for me to put them over Denver, who I guess is no secret is our number 1.
And the way that shaked out is Jacob and I both put Milwaukee as number 1, but Alex putting them all the way down at 3 was enough to tank them down to 2, whereas our Nuggets ratings go Jacob and I put 2 and Alex put 1. And it's just the way the math works out for one reason or another.
Honestly, between the top 3, it's kind of a coin toss regardless for me. I just really believe Dame and Giannis is literally going to be modern day Shaq and Kobe.
Oh, so I'm confused. Because we did an episode where I think we were talking about the hot takes. Oh no, we were reacting to the Damian Lillard trade. When we did that, you both said that, yeah, the Bucks are the favorites to come out of the East, but the Nuggets are still like the favorites to win it all. but yet you guys put them at
Did I say
behind the
that?
Bucks. I'm pretty sure you both said that. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering or.
No, you're probably right.
I'm just
for
surprised
me,
because I thought we were all like in agreement that Nuggets would be. I'm shocked by this.
For me, it's more like you just sure we have to see it, but if I'm really digging down deep and being honest with myself, I agree with Jacob's point of view that Dame and Giannis is just too fucking good. Plus, they still have most of their supporting cast, and this is a championship team 2 years ago or whatever.
I've
so,
also had more time to sit on it. Like opinions can change with time.
Christian Brown might not be as lateral of a move as Bruce Brown. Like obviously, the Nuggets dominated their way through the playoffs last year, but who's to say that they're going to be able to do that again with a slightly different, slightly more depleted roster?
Well, the thing that I've been saying with these three teams, most of us feel like those are going to be the teams that will end up hoisting the 2024 championship. None of them are deep teams. All of them have people going, what about their bench? So at that point, that kind of just cancels that issue out. And then I'm just purely comparing which starting lineup I feel is better. Also, of course, paired with the scheme and philosophy of that lineup. I think the Celtics are probably the biggest wild card just because it's a very big change of personnel from what we've had before. And then with the Bucks, the Nuggets are the safest bet because they just won a title and things are not that dramatically different. Especially it's the damn same in the starting lineup. So I understand Denver's a little bit safer of a pick, but I just feel like there's no way Kobe and Giannis isn't just Kobe and Giannis. Dame and Giannis isn't absurdly good to the point where it will even take it beyond the fact that I think the Nuggets would have the better scheme.
We did get a $2 donation from LP that says the Lakers are better than the Suns. Shrug emoji, better D.
100%.
You can make that argument. I don't hate that.
Yeah, it's also a little bit more continuity as opposed to like the experimental nature of the Suns. We haven't really seen them together for real yet. So,
all right, just for that Kobe and Shaq comparison, because this guy says that that's disrespectful to Kobe. First of all, you don't know who you're talking to, but second of all, in terms of where Kobe was in rankings in the NBA when Kobe and Shaq were dominating, Kobe was towards the bottom of the top 10, and Shaq was unequivocally a top 3 player, many considering him the best. So there you go. And it's a guard and a big man. That's the comparison. It doesn't mean Dame is obviously as good as Kobe Bryant. It's just the dynamic.
I just realized that profile picture looked familiar. This guy comments on like all of our videos and calls us casuals. He goes, "There's a dang Tropic Thunder jersey framed. You can't take this serious." He's like adding people in the chat, calling us casuals.
Tropic Thunder.
I think this guy's just
it's a different movie.
It's a different
well, I guess
movie.
Tropics and Thunder, so he's not wrong, but it's not a Tropic Thunder jersey.
You just got a Ben Stiller
I think
camo
he's
uniform.
hate watching the podcast.
Ooh.
If we're such casuals, then stop watching there, bud. We don't care.
Yeah, that's a next level loser shit. Why are you watching things you don't like? That's just weird.
I guess real quick, let's just address some chats from earlier in the pod, some cues for us to A, or just some comments to react to. Joe B, earlier commenter, says, I think Cat's gone to the trade deadline at the latest. We see any probability of Cat getting traded this season?
I mean, I think there's a chance, but it's not going to happen quick. It'll be like, oh, the team is 500 at the trade deadline. Like, got to make a move quick. But if something comes up, I'm gonna hold off for now because I have some ideas.
You got your secret ideas. You need to keep close to the vest. We got a $5 donation from Calvin Willie. Why do people hate on the Bucks' depth? Connaughton, Portis, Crowder, Payne, Beasley, and Beauchamp is trash. Clearly better than Boston's and Denver's IMO.
I mean, sure, but that's, you're comparing trash to trash. Portis is one of the best six men in the league. Pat Connaughton's cool. He's been a rotation player for them regularly, and he's fine.
Crowder's cheeks, Payne possibly
Malik
cheeks.
Beasley, maybe. He's honestly one of the biggest wild card players for just I think Malik Beasley matters way more than Malik Beasley has any right to matter. Because if he goes back to Timberwolves or what he was even doing even with Denver, where he was just shooting lights out on very high volume threes, he could be a very key contributor. Cameron Payne's not good. Jay Crowder probably isn't good. Beauchamp is extremely unproven. Better bench than Boston and Denver. Yes, still a bad bench. I would say so.
Yeah, to me, there's a difference between being a deep team and being you have a reliable number of guys that can work in the playoffs. It's you can have a solid 8-man rotation and not be deep. You can be deep but not have a solid, championship 8-man rotation. The Bucks, they have 8 guys that you're a certain degree of comfortable with, but after that, it's they're not a deep team in my opinion. Deep usually means you can go deep into the roster, 10 deep, 11 deep, 12 deep, and pull guys that can be productive. I think with the Bucks, after you get 8, things get pretty shaky.
Then we got a 2.5 pound or euro? No, euro, right? Keep up the good work, guys. Bucks and 6, though. Thank you, Rainer Werner Sommelberg. Appreciate that donation. Neil Oldham gave us $5 to say, bet the Grizzlies will miss the playoffs. Too much depth in the West. Mavs and Thunder will be better this year. Too many distractions with Ja. What distractions with Ja are you talking about? That is not happening anymore. This is news from 6 months ago. What is distracting about Ja wearing white t-shirts that say humble or whatever in Instagram posts while he works out? The Grizzlies are one of the best teams in the West, and to suggest that they're going to miss the playoffs because Ja Morant is a distraction or because he's going to miss 25 games just seems silly to me.
This is the longest Rudy's talked all episode.
They were one of 6 teams that won 50 games last year, and I don't think a 25-game suspension with Ja is going to be enough to make them not a playoff team.
Yeah, they've pretty much been
is tough.
They've been pretty perpetually a top seed. I'm not going to bet they miss the playoffs entirely. That's pretty nuts. And I feel a lot of players will have a quote unquote distraction in their career, and then that just becomes their reputation for life. And he had a couple of different offenses in the period, but he's been not a problem lately, and I'm not going to bet on him being that until he does it again.
Yeah. The only way I could see a world where we miss the playoffs is one where Ja gets hurt even after the suspension. Desmond Bane misses some time, and Jaren Jackson misses some time. It's going to take our top 3 guys missing huge chunks of the season, probably a different and the same time, a nice, clean, equal Venn diagram of time missed between those 3 guys, where it's just the perfect storm of horrible basketball and bad luck. Besides that, I don't see a world where the Grizzlies don't at least make the play-in. Matix gave us $2 to say the Nuggets rooks / bench probably better than given credit.
I agree.
Who are the rookies? I'm entirely forgetting who they added to the roster this year.
I don't know their rookies, but their bench I don't think is really terrible. Christian Brown we saw that he's probably going to be a pretty reliable player. They have Zeke Naji, right? Yeah, Zeke Naji.
I'm really hoping that he can be a guy for them.
Yeah, Peyton Watson has looked really, really, really good in preseason. But those 3 guys they're good players.
Yeah, generally when I'm talking about bench depth, whether or not a team has a good bench, I'm talking about how deep is your rotation capable of being in the postseason? How strong is your like best 8 players? Who are your really like strongest 3 bench players? But in terms of like functionally, what matters in a regular season, being able to get by, having guys who can take up minutes so you're not overplaying your starters also is important.
Yeah. Oh, also, Vlatko Čančar was actually pretty solid last season, and he like literally didn't play most of the play. He played 5 games in the playoffs, so like they're getting him back too.
Yeah.
And
didn't he play like a good amount in the regular season though?
Yeah, he played 15 minutes a game over 60 games. I mean, that's enough to be like, yeah, he's a good player. He's a decent player.
Yeah, so it's like him filling in for Jeff Green and Christian Brown filling in for Bruce Brown, basically. Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I love that we both did the head bob thing in response.
Point being, they have other players that can step into the limelight and play.
Someone needs to clip that. That was like perfectly in sync.
Brian K earlier in the chat said ESPN had Paolo 30th on their best players list this year. I think that's a reach, especially with J-Dub at 95. I don't think the gap between these players is 65 spots on the top 100, but it could be 10 or 12. I could maybe 20.
I'm not talking about that stupid list.
Mm-hmm. I will because it's content for the second channel, but
it's great bait. Like they fully leaned in, if not this year, then the past few years of being like, yeah, this isn't about objectivity in any regard. This is about driving clicks. This is a business. Ja Morant falling from 9th to like 35 or whatever is just a bulletin board material.
That's insane.
Derico's Highlight Factory, new frequent watcher of the pod, appreciate you being here, says Mavs will not be better than the Hawks. What would it take for the Hawks to be
I don't know. I guess
I didn't have the Mavs better than the Hawks personally, so I agree.
I don't know why we're even comparing these franchises other than the Luka Trey shit. Who cares?
That's why.
I think it's because we had them higher than the Hawks on the tier on this list.
Yeah.
Yes, but
and in close proximity as well.
Mm-hmm. I disagree. I disagree. There's 2 very, very good players on that team versus 1, and I think both are deep-ish.
To take a break from the Q&As right quick, Desmond says, you can Q my A anytime, Rudy. Winky
what does
face.
that mean? Explain yourself.
Looking at the power rankings, is there any adjustments that we want to make before we close out with our last bits of chats to react to?
Yeah, I think the Sun
42 minutes. So
the Sun should be 27th, but
the Sun should be 27th. Oh, okay. Well, now that we've been going for 102 minutes, I guess now is as good as any other time to end the podcast abruptly.